Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Determinants of Her Health podcast, where we will explore the systems that affect women's health and how we can shape them. I'm your host, Allie Felker, and I am so excited to chat about this topic. Today, we are talking about purity culture, and today I have with me Brenda King. Brenda King spent years inside high control religion and even more reclaiming herself and finding a way out. She is an intimacy coordinator, the author of On Her Knees, Memoir of a Prayerful Jezebel, and is currently writing her second memoir about surviving the LA wildfires. Her work explores the sacred, the sensual, and the unflinchingly human. Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk about this.
Thank you for having me, Allie.
It's good to see you again.
You
Brenda
too.
and I, we first met because I came on your podcast to talk about loss, and then, have since just seen everything that you've gone through and everything with the fires, and it's absolutely crazy. But do you want to just start by kind of introducing yourself and how purity culture relates to you?
Yeah, that question is funny to me now because I've been thinking a lot about permission that I've decided to give myself to be constantly reinventing myself and also to somehow not carry shame about past iterations of myself and things that I'd been through and everything. So when I think about my relation to purity culture, I feel like I'm talking about someone that no longer exists because I currently, right now, don't consider myself having any genuine conflation with purity culture. I don't see my sexuality or my expression of that in those boxes anymore.
Yeah.
But for the sake of history, I will say that there is a very fundamental part of myself that survived purity culture for many years. It began when I was 12 years old. I went to an evangelical youth group, and the irony was that I was going because my friend promised me there'd be so many cute boys there that I didn't know outside of high school, or it was middle school at that time. And I was such a theater nerd and everything. I was like, great, boys who don't know what a nerd I am. I can't wait to show up and flirt and see what's there. And then of course I get the whole talk that I can't be lusting after those boys, and that would make me a certain kind of woman and a Jezebel and all of that stuff, which is why my memoir was called On Her Knees, Memoir of a Prayerful Jezebel, because it's in the Christian purity culture context. Christian, by the way, being a very muddied term, because I still use that term to ascribe my spirituality and what I believe in. But for lack of a better word, let's say, within that Christianity, I could only be a Jezebel because I was sexually active. I was exploring my life in that way. I became curious after I realized my husband was cheating on me about my true desires and everything. But I know a lot of what I'm contending with now as a woman. I'm a mother. I'm a single mother. I'm about to be 43 years old. And I'm starting to realize that kind of purity culture, or what you're supposed to be as a woman, or how you're meant to express yourself or enjoy pleasure, all of the things you're supposed to, is sort of maybe more of a collective purity culture that we experience as women, that constant everything from fat phobia, the way our bodies look, the way our sexuality expresses ourselves, the people we're attracted to, all of it is supposedly imposing so much moral meaning on who we are. When in reality, I think letting go of all of those boxes and as much shame as humanly possible means that you can actually place where genuine conviction resides in your heart, and figure out who you are actually attracted to and what that would look like if you were expressing it from your own genuine point of view without all of that baggage attached. So I think the first part of my journey coming out of Christian purity culture was letting go of all of those boxes Well, maybe there was only one. No, there's a lot of boxes, including fat phobia and being a good wife and all of that stuff. But
Mm,
really letting it go was just like, okay, I'm allowed to be sexually active and I'm allowed to express myself
mhm.
sexually with whatever gender I want, as long as I am being respectful and awake and alive, which is a whole other process that we can get into too, because that
Yeah.
doesn't come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. We're not taught how to really honor our own intuition and our own
Mm,
navigation of the world and our sexual expression with other beings. And then we're allegedly just supposed to be doing it really well when we come
yeah.
into an adulthood. And it's like, no, that's actually not, I think I've probably hurt a handful of people along the way, and I've certainly been hurt along the way.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the shame aspect because for those of our listeners who are not familiar with purity culture was a movement that was so all of the resources say that it took place like in the 90s and early 2000s. I think it's still very much happening today. Maybe it's kind of changed flavors a little bit, but it's still alive and well. And I think that people experience this maybe even before the 90s too. But it's this emphasis on staying virgin. Am I saying that right? Virginal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not penetrated by
Yes.
a
And
peen.
and we'll yeah, and the penetration is the real key part here because
Hmm.
yeah, that was, we can get into that more, but that was like a very big struggle for me when I was dating my husband and really like wanting to abide by this and not really like kind of being like, well, turns out there's a lot more to being a sexual person than just having P in the V sex. So where's the line here? But yeah, this emphasis on like purity and for women especially, I think that there was a lot of messaging about our value being inherently in our virginity. And that and I've heard this from men who grew up in this culture as well, that they got that messaging too, but I think it especially affected women.
Yeah. Yeah, or it affects us in a different way. I've spoken to men that came out of that culture who would immediately dismiss a woman for being sexual because they would
Mm.
categorize her as a Jezebel, even if she didn't grow up in the same culture, because they were programmed and conditioned to believe only a one type of, it's like so
Yeah.
much of it becomes subconscious after a while, and then we're just like knocking trauma against each other.
Yeah.
And on these like horrible, annoying manosphere podcasts where the guys like have a slew, like a chair full of women, or a line of chairs of women, not one chair full of women. And they're just like berating them and asking them for their body counts and everything. That's like somehow, like you're saying to your point, how purity culture it always infests culture overall. It's an insidious idea that, just like you said, our worth as women just comes in this very plain fact of, has your V been penetrated by a P?
Yeah. And how many times has it happened?
How,
Because then yeah, it's
or
like,
with how
oh,
many people?
yeah, yes, not how many times, with how many people, because somehow that's the like quantifying factor of value is like how many,
Yeah.
yes, how
Really
many
quickly,
different.
Alyssa Libb, she's a sex educator that's on, I think TikTok for sure, and Instagram. She's a friend of mine. And I remember she put out a video where she's like, how is it that a woman gets stretched out when she has sex with different men, but she can have sex with one man like 1,000 times and that's not stretching her out?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, a good point. And also, what am I looking for? Our anatomy is so elastic. It's made to stretch and recover constantly. We can give childbirth. Like, what are you talking about us being stretched out, please?
So some of the analogies we were given were a rose with its petals ripped off, that every time you had sex, you would lose a petal. And so by the time you were ready for your husband, you would just be a stem. I'm trying to think of what some other ones were. I remember chewed up gum was one of them. Yeah, there
Yeah,
was a lot
chocolate
of
bars, spitting in a
uh,
glass of water and then asking the
oh,
last boy if he wants to drink it, which is particularly grotesque, especially when you look at the statistics of how many people have been essayed in our
yeah,
country alone. And you're going around telling teenagers and young people that they're filthy after sex, you know?
yeah,
And the most ridiculous part about it too is like I never heard a conversation once in church about the clitoris, for example, the
no,
way the men should be like interacting with that. And also growing up in like the 90s and 2000s, there was just the narrative that your first time is going to be really painful. You're going to bleed and it's going to be really difficult.
mm,
Meanwhile, the more that I've learned and the more I've grown up, I realize that's just often. I mean, sometimes there are larger problems like vaginismus, which can occur within
yeah,
purity culture or different like stigmatized experiences with sex or from trauma. But overall, generally, no one likes the word normally, but let's say like pretty often, the
yeah.
solutions are like lubrication and foreplay. And then it doesn't have to be so excruciatingly painful. Like, can you imagine that?
Let's get into that because I actually did have vaginismus.
You
And
did.
I did. And
Oh.
it was so, if you're related to me, just stop watching now. So, so what happened was, my husband and I really, so more so me, I was still very much into the like I want to do the right thing. And I think like so much of my deconstruction journey gave me freedom because so much of my life had been like I have to do the right thing and if I don't I am not good. And but then I really struggled. I wanted clear cut like this is the right thing. Like these are the rules. And once I understood like what the rules were, then I could like know where the lines were and I could operate within those rules and I could be the good person who like lived in that rule. And so I consumed books, podcasts, sermons, like everything that I could consume about what, you know, intimacy could look like before marriage that was with like okay. And and like I never really felt like I was knowing what that was because I don't know, I always got the message of like if you're asking where the line is, then you're already trying to sin. And I was like, no, I'm trying so hard not to. I just don't know where like the boundaries are. Like, and it was like your heart is the problem, not your actions, and like all this stuff. And I was like so frustrated because I truly felt like my heart was in the right place. And then, so we did lots of stuff that like looking back, I really kind of wish we had just had sex before marriage because I think that the pressure that I had put myself under, the stress of planning a wedding, I had a really significant medical event less than a year before we got married, and like all of that had accumulated to I'd never had a speculum inserted inside me before. And so like the night of our wedding, I'm like, it's time. This is great. I'm so excited to finally have this thing that's supposed to be wonderful and be fantastic. And like I literally could not get inside. It was like a wall. And fortunately for me, I saw a gynecologist and then actually inserting the speculum and then me like kind of doing exercises at home solved the problem fairly quickly. But it was, I mean, just for and fortunately for me too, this only lasted for a couple weeks. I know a lot of women who this lasts them years, and it's like a significantly traumatizing thing. But for me, fortunately, like I was able to resolve it. But I, for years, struggled with the like, why isn't this type of sex feeling good to me? Where other things did feel good and felt fun, but I really struggled with like, who am I? Am I broken? And is there something wrong with me if I'm not feeling good in this context of what we've been taught is the best form of sex?
Yeah. I'm so sorry you went through all of that. And like, and yeah, and the concept of like, God, it just being built up to the craziest extreme. And also too, like, a lot of people have talked about like how on a wedding day, after all of that stress and everything, you might not necessarily even be in the mood for that. Like I didn't have sex on
No.
my wedding night. And it's so much pressure on everybody with it's pressure paired with not only an egregious lack of information, like
Mm-hmm.
true information, but a total campaign of disinformation about the
Mm.
way our bodies are supposed to work and how God will just bless things abundantly and everything is going to be great. And it's like none of that is medically sound. Oh, so many people now too are talking about how women's bodies have only begun to be studied since the 2000s.
Yeah.
So, back in our day in the 1900s, like all of the medical his like information we had was based upon male bodies and how they were functioning. And the same thing with sexuality. Like, which book am I thinking? I mean, there's so many books written about the differences between like arousal, and it's not necessarily completely gendered, but there are some generalizations that tend to really make sense and work. And both are so deeply negated in purity culture because if like this is why my YouTube channel, which I haven't mentioned either, I had a YouTube channel, which is how we got connected in the first place, called
Yeah.
God is Gray, where I was contending with what I saw as gray areas that were
Mm.
completely denied within Christianity. So it's like the moment someone raises their hand and is like, hey, this isn't adding up, the only answer we were given was your heart is deceitful. Like they might
Yes.
as well just be like, shut the fuck up. Which is it's the same exact thing. Your heart's deceitful, shut the fuck up. And it's like, guess what? Our heart is not deceitful. I mean, we're both mothers. Like, for example, I cannot imagine telling my child not to follow his heart. And when we talk to, I haven't gotten into too many of these conversations, but he's 6.5. So we start conversations about,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I don't love the premise of stranger danger. I grew up with something called stranger danger in the
Yeah.
80s and 90s, which is like, if you're in trouble, you or not even if you're in trouble, like you just need to be afraid of strangers, point
Yeah.
blank. If they're a stranger, run away. I am trying to do a much more embodied raising of my child and making sure that he's more in tune with his feelings and his nervous system. And it's like, I don't care if it's a woman in a plaid suit who looks really nice. If she gives you a weird feeling in your tummy, that's the person you run away from. It's not that she's a
Wow.
stranger. It's like to feel it in your nervous system and in your body. So many people coming out of purity culture get walked out of it through embodiment practices and somatic healing, etc., because you really do need to tap back into this animal form that we're given because religion steals our animal nature away from us completely, which is
Mm.
such a gigantic miss because, like, evolutionarily, we're primed more and more and more as the centuries go on to be more attuned. Like, I remember the first time I noticed that women could communicate without speaking.
Yeah.
I went to my cousin's friend's house. My cousin was like super cool, like always thrifting. She was just in this crowd of super cool kids. They're all smoking cigarettes, getting their noses pierced and stuff. And I was just enamored by them as like an elementary school girl looking at the, middle
Yeah.
school girls or whatever. And I just remember sitting in this living room and I saw my cousin's friend like do a little something. And then my cousin responded. And it was the first time, like with my feminine wiles, I was like, oh, what's that? Like, we can do that. And because I understood what they were both saying. And like, it's so funny that that somehow wound up as such a formative memory to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an example of the great, egregious tragedy it is to take a young woman and tell her her heart is deceitful and that she doesn't know what she's thinking, feeling, doing, that she can't intuit what is right for her own body. And and then it bleeds out into every area of life. It is such a poison because then women will wind up having terrible traumatic experiences in childbirth or at the gynecologist. Like right now, I'm almost at the end of Lena Dunham's book, Fame Sick, which is so revelatory and beautiful to me. And I resonate, unfortunately, with a great deal of it. But she's gone through so many medical traumas. And there's one portion in the book where a man has his like hand up in her, essentially, like working as a doctor, doing his thing, and she knows something is wrong. And he ended up
Mm-hmm.
bursting something within her and causing a worse medical situation for her. And it's like the disconnect between realizing that a traumatic childbirth or an invasive gynecological experience or being forced to have sex with our husband on our wedding night or being completely gaslit into rape culture. But we are like given so many Bible verses out of context. Wives, submit
Mm-hmm.
to your husbands. And I mean, watching the exhaustive gymnastics couples will do nowadays. I was listening to Diabolical Lies, which is an incredible podcast by two very well studied incredible women who break down different political issues and stuff. But they were trying to figure out this podcast between Charlie and Erica Kirk. And they're
Mm-hmm.
basically both like talking about like submit to your husband and be meek and gentle and all of the things that women are given. And the irony that is never lost on me is how powerful most of these women are. And well, not
Yeah.
powerful. I mean, that's giving way too much because I am not aligned with the way these women are behaving, which is basically like riding for these ideas and convincing other women to do things that they are not themselves doing. Like,
Yeah.
they're not meek and gentle in spirit. They're not
Yeah.
submitting to their husbands. They're not staying home and abstaining from work. I was on the internet for 5.5 years, and it was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And it
Yeah.
took time away from my baby. I remember in the pandemic at one point, my baby's father was like, he comes over to a computer to look at you and you don't look at him, so he gives up on you. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't be doing this anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
that is like something that I could calibrate within myself to be like, I need whatever. That's a whole other conversation. Again, like too about the purity of our work and how we need to
Mm-hmm.
balance work and children and all about what kind of women we are meant to be and what is an
Yeah.
ideal woman. When in reality, it's not rocket science to realize that every single person is a very unique individual with unique and specific sets of needs and unique and specific childhoods that have formed them into a certain kind of being that is just having relationships with other people and bouncing off of other people and seeing what works. Like, as soon as you start building all of these boxes around yourself, and worst of all, letting external forces, voices of alleged authority, like pastors, anyone, teachers, parents, anyone in authority can be wrong because our truest authority is meant to be within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone still cares about the Bible says that like when
Yeah.
Christ left and died, we were all left with the Spirit of Christ within us, which means that we have the authority within us to know what our life should look like.
Yeah. Well, even the whole verse that's kind of been taken out of context to say like your body is a temple, a lot of people see that to be like, oh, you should like eat healthy, exercise, and like, it's become like a wellness sort of thing. But the original context of that verse was that like your body is meant to like house the Spirit of God, right? And it was like
Mm.
instead of having like this external temple that had like the Spirit of God, now it's supposed to be your body. And so I liked when you talked about how you're teaching your son how to have intuition. One of the ways I say that to my daughter is like, what is your body telling you right now? And it's really funny because she's almost 5. She will use that to her advantage sometimes and say like, well, my body's telling me I need some treats. Like, and I love it. Like, it's great. But we were never given those tools or that language. In fact, we were told to not listen to our bodies. Like, we were
Hmm.
told the exact opposite. And I think it is really dangerous to disconnect women to their intuition because like our just like that story you told of being able to watch the two women talk to each other with their eyes, like our intuition guides so much of what we do, whether we realize it or not. And I think especially in like the medical context, like our intuition is so important in really knowing like, is this that what's right for me and my body in this context, and not really listening to the external sources. Like we've been talking about pastors, but I think it's true for in a medical context as well. Like I'm a big promoter of like patient-centered care, where we're having doctors actually like partner with patients to determine what's the best outcome. And like we purity culture like is the exact opposite of that, where it's like listen to authority, don't listen to your body, fit within this framework. And then talking about these women like who are saying that womanhood has to look a certain way, and then they themselves not even representing that, I think is another huge part of like, purity culture. Everybody says it happens in like the 90s and 2000s. I think the new purity culture is sort of this almost like tradwife trend of this is what womanhood looks like. And if you are not adhering to this form of womanhood, if you're not having kids and raising those kids and nurturing them and, in the way that we say is best, then you are not fitting within the framework of what it means to be a woman. And it's just incredibly dangerous because, the world, to your point, the world is very gray. There are so many different experiences that people can have, and we have to move beyond this culture where we're listening to one authority who's telling us this is the way you're meant to live your life.
Yeah. I'm thinking too that when you're talking about your daughter using it and being like, my body's telling me I need treats.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing to observe is that in that purity culture, Christianity context, men can, well, again, I keep reaching out to the greater sphere too, and pop culture with anyone you can think of. Generally, unfortunately, in our collective culture that's like most accepted, a man is flawed and a woman is destroyed. It's
Mm,
definitely true within the way Bible stories have been told to me. Jezebel was like fed to dogs, which is deplorable and disgusting. There are women whose bodies were absolutely wrecked within the biblical stories, women that were sent out into a pack of wolves, as in a pack of men who were
mm,
like they just given to them. A man gave his daughter and his concubine over. And I'm trying to not be explicit. It's the most
yeah.
horrific Bible story that you can
That
read. It's
we were
absolutely
told as like
disgusting.
children. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
like,
Yeah, I'm like, you might as well show your child The Exorcist. Like, what is the
it,
difference? Like,
yeah,
one is actually maybe less scary because we see it less often.
yeah.
But what am I saying? With that sort of story and the Jezebel story, Jezebel was like so seductive. Like when she got eaten by a pack of wolves, like F-U-C-K her, like good thing she's dead.
Mm,
Meanwhile, you have every male figure in the Bible, David, he plotted to kill another man's wife, or plotted to kill his affair.
yeah,
Bathsheba, is that who it was?
yeah.
Like losing my biblical stories. Plotted to kill her husband in battle so he could sleep with her. He's a flawed man. He's a man of God. And I got in a screaming match with my dad. I'm like at post fires, by the way, full disclosure, living in my parents' basement while I recover and rebuild my life. So it's interesting because I am dating again in the most serious way that I have in many, many, many years,
Mm,
because of anxious and avoidant attachment styles, which we can get into. And I'm also in a place where I'm sort of being brought back to childhood because I'm in the midst of it. I haven't lived with my family since I was 19 years old and I moved to California.
yeah.
And there's a lot of trigger points and things that come up that I am choosing to alchemize and figure out and go to therapy over and really work through. But I was screaming at him the other day because Trump is a flawed man. He's flawed. Like, I'm like, I'm reading transcripts from the FBI about what this man has done, but he is just a flawed man of God. We never were granted that privilege of just being flawed and
Mm,
going or being allowed to make a mistake. Again, in
yeah.
the collective of like pop culture, I'm thinking about the way Woody Allen is treated for his
Yeah.
crimes versus the way Alina Dunham is treated just because people are fat phobic and might not like her personality. I'm like, is really that's the worst a woman could be to you, and we cannot forgive that, but we can forgive these guys. So it really like permeates everything, unfortunately. But I think for like new generation and I think motherhood, by the way, and fatherhood should be like extended to collective. This is about community. Like you can
Mm,
be a quote unquote childless person and still be an absolutely credible mother figure
yeah.
in your community. That happens
Yeah.
all the time. The aunties and the best friends and the godparents and that sort of thing. There's so many opportunities to step into your parenthood and to really show that those aspects of yourself, whether or not you choose to, can, etc., have children yourself.
Yeah.
But I want us to teach our kids that like you're allowed to make mistakes because also within
Yes.
purity culture, my perfectionism has shot me in the foot so many times. And dating now, I'm realizing I'm like trying to be perfect princess and perfect, perfect, perfect. And it's like that's not showing my true self. And with your daughter, for example, saying, well, my body wants treats, part of being allowed to make mistakes and to fall every once in a freaking while or to play like fuck around and find out
Yeah.
essentially is crucial to the human experience. Like there's a time in her life where she won't have a mother at the fridge guarding it and she'll be like overeating a gigantic chocolate cake all by herself, and her tummy ache will inform her that maybe she should have made a different choice. Like,
Yeah.
that's my ideal. And then, could she please not beat herself up for days after, or throw it up, or deny it happened? Can our children, can the next generation just sit in the discomfort of having made mistakes without having to amend them completely, immediately, without having to count it as a character flaw that they carry forever? My sister, I love her so much. She's just like a very open and honest person and didn't get in the religious nonsense that I did. So I feel like she doesn't carry the shame that I do. But I remember I had made a mistake one time, a mistake to me sexually that I felt could hurt someone.
Mm,
And I had the shame about it, which in that case, I would call it more conviction than shame. It's like, I think
yeah.
I actually did something wrong here. I actually did something wrong here. I don't like how that felt. I don't like what that was. And she was like, let's like it's a, okay, great information. Don't do that again. And
Yeah.
if you do and you do it again and you do it again, then you're creating a pattern. Then you are living within a character flaw and creating a narrative into your life that is not going to be good. That's when you can like tumble and become a bad person, um, or a person who does bad things, maybe more appropriate way to say it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I still don't feel permission to make mistakes. And
No.
that's the thing that I'm working on so much right now, especially within dating, just currently. And I know that will, if I can heal these parts of myself that are so terrified of not being perfect, then that will likely bleed into every area that it needs to. Then I won't have to be a perfect mother with a perfect body,
Mm.
with a perfect sexual expression, with the perfect gender, with the perfect person. You're like, just let that all go.
It's so hard. And I've been super fortunate to have a partner who's been very supportive. So when we were dating, I was a hairdresser and I got really sick and I lost the ability to move my right arm because I had so much like nerve damage in my shoulder. So like my whole career was like gone. And I remember I'm 5 years younger than him, and I remember texting him because I was like, "Hey, like, would how do you feel if I like went to school?" And he was like, I'm excited for you and whatever you choose to do with your life. Like, it was very like affirming, but it was really interesting because I felt like I needed to have that like external like validation. And then I also felt that like throughout so much of like my 20s, like if I'm not doing something that's like impressive or checking the boxes, then like I am a failure. And it was so, my worth was like so tied to what I did. And it honestly still is. Like, it's something that I think I will wrestle with for the rest of my life. Like, trying to detach like my worth from my output. And like, part of that can just be living in like a very capitalist society that like
Yeah.
raises workers. But,
Hmm.
I think that our upbringing relates to that so much. And yeah, being able to raise a kid who's able to make mistakes and not be afraid to just try things. I felt so like debilitated, honestly, because I was like, I'm so afraid to try things because what if I go on this like path that is the wrong path and it's not God's plan? And it's, you know, because like, oh, the worst thing that could happen is for you to be outside of God's unique plan for your life, you know? And so,
Which will be
but
dictated by this man at the pulpit who knows
yeah, and
everything
like,
about you.
yeah. And I'm a very literal person, so I took that as like, if I am not, on choosing the right major in college, like if I'm not like it was like I took it so literal. I became so truly like debilitated by this like fear of failure. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah, and it
it's a
sounds like
lot.
that's not even a failure
And
to please this idea of God, the
yes,
Godhead. Like, because that's not even failure. I mean, every great, there's so many quotes from great artists and thinkers and writers who say that some of your worst mistakes and failings lead to the most incredible times in your life and
yeah.
lead to the best art you'll make and the best business that could possibly be. Because every once in a while, we really do have to fall flat on our face to figure
Hmm.
out what doesn't work. And I'm a Jersey girl living in Jersey, and we have Thomas Edison. And one of the famous stories about him is that he was like trying to invent the light bulb, and he attempted whatever 1,238 times. And a friend was like, dude, give it up. Like, you can't figure it out. And he's like, no, I know 1,238 ways this doesn't work.
Yeah,
And then what does he do eventually? Make the light bulb.
yeah.
So, like, life really is like that. And, it's just, it's so purity culture and evangelical Christianity presents everything in these black and white notions that if you just follow these exact rules, which by the way is excruciating for someone with OCD. Like, I'm not even a person with OCD, but there were times within my evangelical Christianity where I couldn't figure out which shirt to wear because I was like, God, tell me the answer. It's like, I'm sure the real God is like, Jesus Christ, girl, just put on a shirt.
Just
Like,
calm down.
you're fine. But it does really have you in that way. And people with OCD have reported to having horrible bouts of OCD just trying to assimilate into this insanity. And it's like ironic because it's presented as like, well, here you go. You just submit to your husband and da 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 da, and you follow XYZ. But in reality, it's so oversimplified in a way that is completely antithetical to anything in the real world, that all of these actual life challenges come your way and all these unexpected trials, like you're talking about health issues and losing an entire career. And it's like, we're primed to believe that these are moral failings. Like, oh, I fell
Mhm.
off the path of God, not to speak for you, but like,
Oh,
yes,
100%. I was
right.
like, I must have done something wrong or fallen off of God's path. And I actually think that people did tell me this when I got sick.
Oh
Like,
my God.
yeah, like I mean, God's in control. He has a plan. Must have been a reason why maybe you just weren't on the right path and he needed to move you back to. And so he created this, you know, I nearly died actually. So, like, it was like, you know, okay, so I was so incredibly sick and in so much pain. Like, that's the loving, wonderful father that wants to get me back on track. Like, he couldn't have just like sent a message or like pressed it upon my spirit or all the other things that, you know, we say God can do. No, I had to get debilitatingly, horrifically ill and lose a career and go through that in order for him to. Anyway, that's an aside. I don't know. That's just, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, no, that's relevant to all of it. That is like what this purity, and I think at this point the conversation has moved back past the idea of a pure sexuality. It's about a pure existence, a
Yes.
pure, godly, blameless, evangelical Christian existence, which I mean, we see how it devolves so quickly into hate too, because anyone who's living genuinely free, who's not afraid of their neighbor and their differences, who doesn't feel like they have to evangelize every single person who doesn't believe the same thing, it gives an openness. Like when the Bible talks about freedom in Christ, I live with freedom in Christ. I do right now. And that has only come with actually letting go of all of this BS. Like, I always see my evangelical Christianity as a sweater. And the first little string I started to pull was like, why are you telling me gay people are going to hell?
Yeah.
I just remember the first time I heard it, I remember it made me physically sick. To our
Mm.
point about raising our children to listen to our bodies, it made my stomach hurt
Yeah.
and my hair stand up on my arms a little bit because it's wrong. Because it's wrong. And your
Yeah.
body knows. My body knew it was wrong. And that's why my body, my animal self, which allegedly Jesus chose to incarnate into. So, how disgusting and despicable can our bodies actually be?
Yeah.
Like, this is our attunement to this world. Maybe there is another place where then we just get to relax and sit on a cloud and be blameless forever. But like, I frankly hope that's not where I'm headed because life is such a grand adventure. I have not always enjoyed it. I'm kind of only on the very beginning of healing enough to really being enjoying the journey of life.
Yeah.
But like, free will is real, and a part of the free will I've utilized is like what's coming up for me is thinking about this like really sweet love affair I had when I was going through some of the most tumultuous moments in my life, of things with my son's health that were
Mm.
incredibly difficult. My dog got hit and run. I got canceled off the internet and like publicly shamed. And I was going through all of these things. And at the time, I had just had a first date with this man we'll call Hugo. And I remember we had this first date and it was just like really sparky and I didn't think it was going to be a forever thing. It didn't
Mm.
feel like it had the legs for that, but there was definitely this initial strong connection. And before our second date happened, I got this diagnosis about my son. And I ended up calling him and being like, hey, I'm about to be kind of much heavier than I was before. I'm not the like cool, light-hearted girl. He's like, I'm about to be going through some like real shit. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to give you the heads up in case you're not trying to go on that kind of journey with me. And this is where I really believe in the alchemy of actual love making, which by the way isn't just P and V. It's like
Yeah.
everything around it, everything you were already exploring with your future husband and not just the physical. Like
Yeah.
although, I would say, I guess to clarify, not just the sexual physical, the hand
Yes.
holding, the things that co-regulate your body alongside someone else's. A part of my healing, very surprisingly, has come from allowing myself to be open to certain men. Like the
Mm.
first part of my healing was being able to recognize that I deserved good love and a good man and a communicative person that wouldn't heighten my anxious attachment or make me feel like I didn't know what was going on. But as soon as I aligned with this specific person in that moment, it started becoming an alchemy of lovemaking and experience, because every time one of these traumas happened, like the day my dog got hit and run, it was on Thanksgiving Day. And I was actually supposed to go to Hugo's house and have dinner with his family. Again, in this, like, we're not going to be together forever kind of way, but I don't have
Yeah.
anything to do for Thanksgiving. My son is with his dad. Like, let's have Thanksgiving. So that was the second time I called him and was like, hey, I'm gonna be really heavy again. Like, I'm gonna be heavy as fuck. I'm not gonna be a cool girl. I'm gonna be crying. And
Yeah.
he was like, come on over. We'd love to
Yeah.
have you. And those are the moments where you're just like, my messiness is being not only embraced but accepted and like
Mm.
coddled and sweetened and alchemized into this acceptance that then makes me feel like I'm an acceptable person even when I'm
Mm.
not perfect.
Yeah, so much on the like, I'm an acceptable person even when I'm not perfect. So my husband actually started saying to our kids, "You're perfect the way you are, and when you change, you'll be perfect then too." To really, like, oh God.
Oh,
Yeah, like
oh my God,
I'm like, hey. And
yes.
sometimes like when I'm down, he's like, "Honey, you're perfect the way you are." Like, and it's, but yeah, like that is so much of the opposite of the message that we received. And it's interesting because you said, I actually said this too, where I found so much more of like the freedom that Christ promised outside of religion than I did inside of it. And I was like,
No shit.
oh, this is what it was talking. This is what like the joy and the freedom and like the stuff that we were told we were supposed to be feeling and experiencing. Once I like lost all of the, I mean, I didn't lose all of the shame. It's, but once I stopped sort of accepting that as this is what I'm going to be taking on for my like way of living, my rules and everything, then it was like, oh, here's the freedom. Here I can accept myself. I can love who I am as a person. I can love the pieces of me that don't fit within the narrative of this is what, a good Christian woman is supposed to look like, like I can, I don't know, be the person that I am in all of my like non-perfectness, and those parts of me are perfect too. Like it's just, yeah, it's very freeing.
Very freeing, very, very freeing. And so much discovery awaits too, because when you're hiding from yourself, you never get to know yourself,
Yeah.
which is really a tragedy because the deeper I go, the more I realize it's just not so bad down there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of my healing began with doing EMDR therapy,
Yeah.
which is when you activate both the right and left sides of your brain. I did it with my therapist through a butterfly tap, just the
Oh yeah.
sensation of a right to left. And you go into memories that scare you or that just like come prompted in your mind and you're like, I don't know why my brain is bringing this up, let's go in. And I remember one time I had this sort of like vision that I was in this beautiful ballroom, but
Mm.
there was a room to the side that had all these like dead bodies and decay and
Mm.
water damage and rotting furniture. And she just prompted me through the session to walk into the room, open the door super wide, start picking up the furniture, imagining throwing it away, seeing a dead body, just lifting it up and out, pulling it away. And that is so symbolic to me of the way I've always felt about my inner world when it was repressed by either
Mm.
society or Christianity, where it was like, these things are so unacceptable, you can't look at them, but especially
Mm.
the genuinely dark things that have happened and the traumas that we carry forth somatically just from ancestors and wherever we come from culturally. Like there's so much that is there within a person, but then when you just let some light in and start cleaning it up a bit, you can really fix it up, and then it's just a room that you can have people come into. And if you have a really brave person who's really going to be gentle and kind with you, which sounds like your husband is, and this Hugo man was definitely for me.
Mm.
Sometimes you can actually open the door and be like, look at that pile of dead bodies and all that rotted wood. Like, are you gonna run away? And then also the inner knowing that if they do run away, that's okay too. Like,
Yeah.
this is your life. This is your mess to work through. And sometimes you'll have companionship with it, which I do long for and I love the idea of. But sometimes you're doing that work alone, and both paths are beautiful.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this is the freedom we're talking about, because within that evangelical Christians like trad wife structure, there's only one way to do this, and that's to find a man who will walk in that room with you and be repulsed by it or not, and then you guys deal with it or not, and white knuckle it through life or not, and die.
Yeah. And die. Before we uh yeah, before we start kind of finishing up, I wondered about your experience as a intimacy coordinator. Um, and if you can kind of speak to what sort of the mainstream media paints as sex, and if you can see purity culture sort of touch that, or and a little, I think we talked about this a bit about how penetrative sex is kind of viewed as that's the goal, that's the main, that's the top tier one, but
Mm-hmm.
there's, like you said, so much more enjoyment, especially I think for women, that can come out of physical intimacy that can also be sexual but maybe not result in that form of sex.
Yes. Oh, so much to say about this. One of, I mean, this probably is my biggest pet peeve on earth. The
Mm.
fact that for so long, cinema has presented this like pants pulled down, insert. Ah, like I'm like, you didn't even finger her for a second. Like, that is not real.
No.
That's not real. That's not real. And I mean, say what you will about pornography, and there are negative and positive things I could say about it, but I mean, at least you see the process there. Even if it's
Yeah.
kind of like boom, ba-doom, ba-doom. It's like she goes down, he goes down, da da da. Da. At least there's like the build up to that. In cinema, I've always noticed just that completely unrealistic, like boom, now we're in it. It's so ridiculous to me, and I can't get over it. But one of the things that Hollywood has had an issue with since its inception is a massive problem with a lack of diversity.
Mm.
The vast majority of cinema that we've been given is from men, white men, um, full stop. They've tried to implement diversity for more female directors, and then they did a study. I think it might have been no more than a year ago, that showed that those initiatives hadn't worked, and it was actually even
Mm.
worse than it's been in the past. So Hollywood is having its own very messy, I would say, deconstruction phase. Things
Mm.
are crumbling, falling, pay structures are being questioned, oligarchs are coming in and stealing the media and trying to get power and trying to show up at the Met and look relevant when they're absolutely not, artistically anyway. um, so it's always going to be diversity that answers the question of whether or not we can portray an actual realistic idea of different people's sexuality and how they're expressing it, whether it's culturally or from the lens of a female or a male director. Because if you look at the male gaze, we have like, a Michael Bay, Megan Fox leaned over a car sweating, and it's like, okay, that's an iconically male gaze sort of sexuality that we're presented in cinema. And then we have this beautiful like blossoming of female storytelling where all of the sex is being presented as so much more nuanced and from the female gaze. I would like to
Mm.
see more male projects become much more nuanced in the sexuality. I'm sure there are projects that I'm just not privy to yet. I have to do more looking into it because there's a lot of beautiful sexuality that's finally emerging on screen for me.
Yeah.
But for example, with Emerald Fennell and her partnership with her intimacy coordinator, whose name is Miriam Lucia, I'm in great admiration for the work they're doing right now because they did Saltburn and Wuthering Heights, and it's
Oh.
from the female gaze, and even the male sexuality is like it carries this nuance and it builds in tension and the things that might be like evocative and provocative to someone or grotesque to someone else are like on screen, like they're really
Mm.
challenging, like what is erotic, what does make you feel some type of way. And I know for Emerald, she's talked about with her interpretation of Wuthering Heights that it was done from the perspective of how she felt reading that book as a teenager, which is
Oh,
when you're
wow.
feeling all different kinds of things that might be like, not very adult. And,
Yeah.
that she wanted to portray that particular thing on screen. And also fascinated, I left the film without ever realizing that I didn't see any nudity at all. There's no nudity in that film, which I don't think is like by any means a moral statement they were making or,
No.
anything like that. I don't know why they chose that in particular, but I don't it was not puritanicalism that made that choice. I'm sure it was a very specific artistic choice or a choice of the actors to not be showing whatever. But point being, like, they were still able to create these very erotic, sensual, connected scenes between the actors that are beautiful. And then there's another intimacy coordinator who I adore named Ida O'Brien, and she wrote a great book called Intimacy,
Mm.
which is a lot about her experience as an intimacy coordinator, but also talks about intimacy between human beings and how it can be different depending on each person's background or where they live or how they feel or what traumas they had or how open they are or how they get aroused. All of those things, like, there's so much beauty around it to be explored. My favorite project of hers that she's done so far is Michaela Cohen's I May Destroy You. And I would recommend that for every living being on earth because it's actually about an essay
Mm.
that Michaela's character is processing through. And she worked with Ida on the intimate scenes. And there are scenes of intimacy of threesomes and erotic intimacy. There's an intimate scene where a man pulls a tampon out of her before they have sex. And then there's the scenes of the assault, and everything is handled appropriately,
Yeah.
according to the context around that scene. And that's something that cinema for me has been missing for so long because it's all fun and games. I will totally, any day, call me. I will create a scene where there's just two characters rolling around in a bed. And if
Yeah.
you don't want her to get fingered for a millisecond, fine, I'll create that scene for you. But then we're missing the language of intimacy, which is
Mm-hmm.
so robust and has so much to say about the inner workings of these characters.
Yeah.
And so I'm just very exhilarated actually by where cinema is going in the frame of intimacy and how we're exploring actual real life sexuality between people.
Yeah. One other thing that gets me excited is are you on Book Talk?
No, I should be. It stresses me out because I'm like, oh God, I gotta read more. What am I doing?
No. A couple of years ago, my book club, somebody in the book club was like, we have to read A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And I had never, yeah, like never heard of this book before, read it, and I swear for a year it became my entire personality. I was like, I actually, there's a group of women who have started like online Pilates classes that are like related to the book because in like the fifth book, one of the girls, like one of the women, she like goes through all this trauma and she processes the trauma through like working out and becoming a Valkyrie. And like, but a lot of people like to call these books fairy smut and just totally like devalue them as just being like a silly thing that girls are reading. But so much of it, like, I think that, you know, like there are definitely scenes where I'm like, okay, like, sure, yeah, it's, you couldn't wrap your hands around it. Okay, like, that's not real. And also, like, you did no prep and you just took it easily and painlessly, sure. But
Well,
I
that's why it's
do,
called fantasy, right?
yeah, exactly. Like, but this is a fantasy all the way around. But I do think that it's doing something for kind of reviving these women who are, I mean, like, I guess our parents and grandparents' generation, you know, bought the romance books at grocery stores because if it was purchased at a grocery store, the receipt wouldn't show, you know, they wouldn't have to go to a bookstore and validate buying a book. It was a part of the grocery store fund. And it was like,
So smart.
it's so smart, and it's a way for women to access, you know, I mean, some people would say it's porn, but it's really just like a way for us to access pleasure in a different way. And, you know, I I don't know. I'm not going to say book talk's going to save us, but like book talk does offer an opportunity for women to enjoy sex and get excited about having sex and also maybe think about different ways to have sex. And yeah, I think the more that media in different forms kind of portrays sex as not just being a certain way, like the better off we're going to be.
Absolutely. And that's another tragedy of the ultra religious is the idea that it's immoral to fantasize.
Yeah.
Because how can we, I was talking to one of my best friends, we do like miles long voice notes back and forth to each other. And I was telling her that I was fantasizing about something that I won't reveal, not even sexual, like an outcome in my life that I really want. And I felt very uncomfortable fantasizing for it because I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that would be too good to be true. And would that really happen for me? And at the end of the day, I was like, but I have to give myself permission to fantasize about this because it's a way of trying things on for size.
Mm.
And again, going into your body and being like, well, this is in my mind. Let me test it out in my body. Let me see how it feels when I actually think about it. When I put on a song and imagine, what if my life was like that? What if my sex life was like that? What if my partnership was like that? Like, you try it on, you see how it feels, and you'd be so surprised, which is so beautiful to realize like what ultimately hits, and you're like, oh no, actually, no, don't like that.
Yeah.
Because you really do, like, the body has a whole system to it. Like, things can reside in your mind. You place them into your body and let them sit. That's the compass. That's the compass that you need. And by the way, life is so motherfucking hard.
Yeah.
And there are so many challenges. It's like, are we not allowed? Can we really not just fantasize?
Yeah.
Can I just not fantasize for one fucking second, please? Like, and also with sex too, it's like, what other times do adults get to play make believe and
Yeah.
just fuck around and find out in a good way?
Yeah. Oh, so true.
I am in the midst of sifting through a lot of different things, and I'm also in the midst of reorienting myself in this new life. Like, my whole life literally burnt down.
Yeah.
And at the same time, everybody's life burns down at some point. Like, you're talking about health issues, like, everyone has a different way in which it all burns down. And in the evangelical sphere, you're told that's a moral failing or you're on the wrong path. In
Yeah.
reality, that is life reorienting you towards your actual desires. When everything burns down, you look at it you always look at it and you're like, oh, I outgrew all of that, or that
Mm.
wasn't aligned with me, or I needed to come home and be with my family, and it's better for my son here. And like, I've had so many revelations. Like, I am in my parents' basement right now. If you had flashed me a photo of that, especially 10 years ago, and been like, or a crystal ball, you're like, here you are in your parents' basement, I would be like, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I fail that hard? Meanwhile, the secret is that I actually feel more hopeful, more creative,
Mm.
more aligned, more happy, and closer to everything I've ever wanted
Mm.
after it all burnt down. And I've tried different careers on for size. And I used to think because God is Gray was so successful that it would be like a plane, like it just takes
Mm.
off and I have to keep it ascending. When in reality, I think it helped me. The plane took off and letting it all go and letting that all burn down too was great because I'm in the air. I'm already in the air. Now I can do a different thing. Now I'm incredibly impassioned about intimacy coordinating and
Yeah.
I'm writing a book about the fire and I am feeling so alive and well, even though, like I said, if I saw this in a crystal ball, I would fancy myself a disaster.
Yes.
So like let things burn down and let that not be a moral failing in your head because it's not. You're never on the wrong path as long as you're engaging with life.
Mm. I love that. And yeah, I think just giving yourself the permission to, and it's not even like make mistakes. I don't even want to say like failure or make mistakes because it's like just giving yourself the permission to try things and like live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so, so, so important. So what are you up to now? Where can people find you? I know you're writing a book about your experience in the wildfires, but like what's next for you?
Yeah, right now I'm just focusing on that. My due date is in July, so I'm just trying to
I
stay
did not know you were
focused.
pregnant. Oh, your due date
Oh
for
no,
the
no. I'm pregnant with a book. I'm pregnant with a book. My little baby book.
I was like, wait, what? I was like, how have we gone this
Like,
entire
here it is.
conversation?
Little
Yes.
book.
That makes sense. Due date
Yes.
is in July.
And I'm still thriving the most on Instagram, which is
Yeah.
at Brenz Marie, Brenz Marie. And I'm putting out more content that's more like oriented around intimacy,
Mhm.
relationship. Um, yeah, I'm kind of exhausted talking about the Christianity stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm always happy to engage it because some people, everyone's at a different place on their journey out of that toxicity, and I am fully aware it is unfortunately still incredibly relevant,
Yeah.
which is in a way disheartening. I thought God is gray would just solve it, but here we are. It's like a weed that keeps growing that some new person has to just keep pulling out, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been loving the content you're putting out lately. It's been fun. And I like the long form videos. I think they're or not long form, but like I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It's been a pleasure. I think it will definitely help a lot of people, and I think a lot of people will especially relate to a lot of what we've talked about with shame and with being a woman in this culture and growing up in that culture and all of the things. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You can follow along on Instagram at determinants.pod. And if you have a story or an insight you would like to share, you can email me at determinantspod@gmail.com. Thanks so much and have a beautiful and healthy day.